Hello, everyone. This is the Would Somebody Testify podcast. I am your host, Stephen Wood. In this episode, I'll be presenting an interview I did with my Uncle Donnie and Aunt Connie Wood. My Uncle Donnie wound up in the hospital with COVID in 2020. I wanted them to share how God helped them, even though he did not decide to heal Uncle Donnie. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so this is the first go. So, when did you caught COVID in 2020, right?
Yes, September the 10th, I think, and was sick, laid around for a week, and on Wednesday, the 16th, I dug out a whole bunch of old record albums, went through them and read the backliners that somebody had given me from a couple garage sales, a collection from Angela and Brother David Biddle and some of them, and a lot of them were old albums, and they were old at that, been around for years. So I listened to them, enjoyed it, read the back of it, seemed to do pretty good. And that night I got started coughing after a while, and it was terrible. And Connie thought in the morning I'm going to have to take him to the doctor. So I was on some kind of medicine, had to take every so many hours, and she woke me up about 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was so bad, she said, "You're going to the doctor. We're going to take you to the hospital." Well, she had COVID, so she couldn't go in with me, couldn't stay with me. She's going to have to drop me off and leave me there. She went to get herself ready and comb her hair. When she came back in, I was unconscious.
Oh, I don't remember that part of the story.
Yeah, she found me completely unresponsive, and she called the ambulance. And so the ambulance and the fire chief there in town makes a lot of the same runs. He'll run out in his vehicle. So he came out with them, and they was all suited up like people were during COVID. And they tried to reassure her they'd get me to the hospital and I'd be all right, but it wasn't exactly that way. I want to skip part of the story and tell you this much. I saw that same fire chief a year and a half later. In December, my father-in-law died the next December. That chief come out, and when I walked in the door, he said, "Man, it's good to see you up going. I didn't think you'd ever make it. Your numbers were so terrible when we carried you out of here. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. It's sure not upright." So that's the jump on the story that it just stunned me when he said that, because nobody ever told us that my numbers was bad enough that the fire chief didn't think I could even pull out. So they took me to the hospital, and I woke up after a while, and I had like 6 people working on me and doing all kinds of things, hooking me up to machines and IVs, and of course got oxygen on me and doing what they could. And it was kind of a crazy situation. And when I realized what was going on, I knew I was in a hospital, but I didn't recognize anything about it, the room I was in or anything. And I finally asked him, "Where am I?" "Well, you're in a hospital." And I said, "I can tell that, but which hospital?" I said, "What do you think?" "I don't know." "You're in Norman Hospital." So for the next week, Stephen, I didn't really remember a whole lot. I don't remember a lot of details, probably kind of in and out, and slept quite a bit. They talked to Connie and them about putting me on a vent. They talked to me, and I had told Connie there's a 5% chance back then. There was no vaccines or anything. 5% chance that I'd live if they put me on a vent. I said, I'd about as soon die as spend all the money and waste all the time and die anyway. But the doctor finally came in, and I have no idea. I don't remember her. She was a pulmonologist there in Norman Hospital, and Dr. Eagle talked me into letting them put me on a vent. They couldn't do it till I went unconscious if I refused, but she finally talked me into it. So when they put you on a vent, they put you into a drug-induced coma. So for the next 3 weeks, I don't remember a thing. Actually, don't remember anything for probably 4 weeks. But I made no response to any questions or anything till 3 weeks. And I finally, when I fluttered my eyelids and made a little response when they'd talk to me. So then I started coming around and don't remember a lot. I really don't. I had IVs in the right arm and pick and left arm and both arms and all kinds of stuff. So I'm not hardly using my hands, can't hardly do anything. And they finally took the right hand loose enough, and they would tell Connie, exercise that hand. It's not getting any exercise. So she'd work my hand while she sat there. Well, then COVID got bad enough, they made her quit coming. So at that point, they wanted to move me to Shawnee to the hospital. And Brother Steve Mahan had been in Shawnee Hospital, and he about died there, and they didn't take care of him good. It was awful how they treated him. So he didn't recommend to her that she let me go there. She called and talked to him, didn't you? And don't let him go there. So they ended up deciding they couldn't get me off the vent. Every time they'd try to wean me off the vent, I'd set the alarms off within a few hours and wasn't getting enough oxygen. And so they wanted to put me then to a hospital in Oklahoma City. I've lived in Oklahoma City 50 years. I didn't even know it was there. It's called Select Specialties Hospital, and I didn't have any idea it existed. So they ended up putting me in an ambulance and taking me up there, and I went up there, and they said they'd try to have me off of the vent in 3 weeks. Well, when 4 weeks passed by, they still didn't have me off the vent. I was still having all kinds of problems. They'd taken me off. I went a day and a half or so one time. They thought I got choked. Well, they weren't feeding me. I had a feeding tube in. They put a trach in me while I was at Norman because I was developing. When I got off of the vent, they had tubes for breathing, feeding tubes down my nose and in my mouth. And so I had no way to eat, and I was getting sores in my mouth. So they decided they was going to do a trach. And I was awake enough. They talked to me about it then, and I told them, well, I guess that'll be all right. Is my wife going to get to come? Yeah, we'll get a hold of her, and she'll be here. And she was there the day I put the trach in. I don't think you came in the room, did you? Did you? They let you come in. So I was being fed through a tube, breathing through all this time for weeks now. And I remember asking one of the nurses at Norman, said, I hadn't had any supper. Is anyone going to bring me something to eat? And said, you can't eat right now. I said, how am I living? And she said, you got a tube and you're being fed on a tube. And I said, who in the world's having to pay for that? She said, your government. So that was one of those deals, like all of a sudden I realized I'm not been eating and what's going on.
About when was this? So you said
6 or 7 weeks after I'd been hauled to the hospital, probably about 6 weeks when they told me that probably. And they moved me about 7.5 weeks then to Select Specialties Hospital. Select Specialties Hospital is a long-term acute care. When you're too bad to send home or too bad really to put in a rest home, but they need more room in a hospital or there's not much more they can do, they send you to a special long-term acute care place. I didn't know it existed, and it's just to the west of Baptist Hospital up in the north side of Oklahoma City. So they took me up there. I don't say this to degrade the hospital, but it was the noisiest hospital I've ever been in my life, and it was maybe the dirtiest hospital. They were overworked during COVID, working shorthanded. I heard the boss of the nurses, one of the directors there, would come in and ask, who can work the weekends? Who can give me extra hours? I heard them asking them that. So I know they were pushed beyond measure. The nurses and the aides and everything treated me wonderful. But the whole situation was they used those old-fashioned pagers that beep. So when I pushed my button on the bed and called for a nurse, they'd send a beeper out, and it would beep out on the outside of my room door, and it would beep on whoever was on call for my room on their pager on their side. So in the late evenings, 8:30, 9 o'clock, everybody's wanting to go to bed, and most of us were basically semi-invalid or invalid. They'd have to get us up, take us to the bathroom, and do all kinds of things to get us ready for bed. And when they did, it was beep, 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 all up and down the hallways, in your rooms, and it just drive you nuts. Well, I was sick enough, I'd go back to sleep pretty quick, but it's just annoying at times. And I'm thinking there's got to be a better way to page them without making everybody in the aisle hear it all down this hallway. But there was an old doctor there, Dr. Cook, and he shuffled his feet when he walked, and he walked like an old man. Connie asked him, I think, or I did, and he was 75 years old, still working all the time, and he'd come in on mostly the evening shifts, and he'd check my numbers and check with me and come visit with me. When he did, I would just do whatever he was asking and saying, and he wasn't just real friendly and hardly ever sat down by you or had anything. So I'd been in there 4 weeks, and I was still on this vent, still carrying on. Nothing was any better. And I told the Lord one night, I said, Lord, I'm such a wimp. I'm so tired. I'm so miserable. Can I just go home? He said, well, that would be okay. But if you do, you won't get to see what I want to show you. And that got me. I didn't know what to say. Yeah. I really felt like I was talking to the Lord. I mean, I was having an experience with the Lord, and I kind of got back and said, well, I cried some and said, I'll try to stay.
Not the answer you wanted, but an answer.
It's right, because at that point, I was ready to go home. I was so sick and couldn't get better. So that was quite an experience that night. And I thought, well, I guess I'm going to be around for a while, it looks like. I told the Lord, I'll try to stay. So a day or two after I'd had that experience, the doctor comes in, and he looks at me and he said, Don, your numbers are no good. Your lungs aren't working right. You're showing signs of pneumonia. You got COVID, and it's really a problem. He said, we have all kinds of wonderful medicines nowadays, and I am giving you the best I know to give you. And said, we got some mighty good ones, and nothing is helping you. Said, I'm going to give you one more tonight, and if it don't do it, tomorrow I'm going to come down here, run an endoscope down you, and look in your lungs and see what's wrong. Said if there's a growth that the x-rays aren't showing, and they were x-raying about every day or every other day, all the time, bringing in x-ray guys and make you sit up in the bed and put that thing behind you. And so, of course, I can't talk. I'm doing a lot of whispering because this trach they'd put in. They finally fitted me with a voice box where I could, when they'd pull the vent off for a few minutes and let me try to wash my mouth out or get a little bit of relief, they would they would give me a little relief from that, and they would hand me a voice box, and I'd try to talk to them then, and I could talk.
When you say a voice box, you're talking about something that would pick up your just kind of like a microphone and speaker, or was it a little more?
Just a little old tiny box. It looks almost like a piece of foam rubber, and they just shove it right up against your throat, and it would pick up your vocal cord action some way. I can't explain it, Stephen, because it didn't look like anything. There was no electronics hooked to it, nothing. And then one night, about the time I'm in that, I have a problem and I need to get suctioned. And what they would do is they'd run a tube down my trach hole, and they would suction the loose mucus off of my lungs, and it'd give me some relief. I'd never heard of it till I got in there and they were doing it. The nurses' aides weren't allowed to do it, but the nurses were, and the respiratory therapist. And so there was a respiratory therapist come in one night, and I'm trying to talk to him, and I can't talk above a whisper, and I don't have the deal there. And he reaches over and touches me, puts his finger on the right spot on my voice box, and I can talk. Blew my mind, because I hadn't been able to talk in weeks, and I was wondering if I'd ever get a voice back. He knew exactly where to put his finger. I told Connie that room was dark enough, barely had any light, just a kind of a night light on. I don't know how he ever did it. He's the only one that ever did it. But I think he did it one other time. He came in, and he knew exactly where to put his finger and make my voice box where it would work.
Did you ever try putting your finger on your own voice box to see if
I tried, but I could never figure where to do it. Yes, I did, because it was so miserable. Stephen, nobody knows what that dumb man in the Bible and deaf and dumb people go through. I had an experience that was unbelievable by that, because I would try to whisper, and I couldn't even whisper enough. And then when I had that mask on, they'd pull it off to see if they could read my lips. And the nurses would look at me and say, "We can't read lips. But let me go get somebody else." And they'd come in, and I couldn't talk to them enough to even get it across. So they brought me a picture thing, and if you wanted a book or a drink or whatever. Well, when you have a trach, you can't get a drink. You can't suck out of a straw. You can't get a drink. And they would put water into your feeding box in your gown that it was tied to your feeding tube. And in that feeding box, they would get a big syringe when they'd come in every so many hours, every 4 hours or what it was. They'd check that feeding tube, and they'd add food in this box, and they would add water in there, take a big old syringe. And after about the second or third day, I'd notice when they would do that, I could feel that water going all the way down into my stomach. And it was such a relief. My mouth would be so dry. They'd give you some kind of mouthwash, and they'd swab your mouth out, and it tastes good right then. In about 2 minutes, it was an awful aftertaste. It was bad. And so I'm experiencing being dumb, can't talk at all. And it was awful, because I'm quite a talker. I like to talk. And my communication has always been ask questions, find out what they're thinking, find out what I'm supposed to do or they're going to do, find out how many kids they have, just visit with them. So they worked on me like that, and the nurses. And I haven't said anything about it, but my hands were so crippled up. This left hand, the wrist went limp. I couldn't move the fingers at all. The right hand wouldn't open and close right. I couldn't grip anything. If I held my phone in my hand, I'd drop it on the bed. So finally, Connie took the phone for weeks. I didn't even have it because I couldn't operate it.
So you couldn't even point to what you need or use a keyboard or nothing?
I couldn't, no, not, and they brought me a picture thing, and you would take a pointer, like a big fat pencil, like a little kid's pencil, and they would try to get you to point at things on there. Well, one day they did let me, Connie bought a tablet, and I had talked them into somewhere in the process. I don't know how far along. I talked them into putting Singing News Radio. I had an app on it, and I talked them into playing it in my room for me. Isn't that right?
We did that at Norman.
Yeah, I was at Norman.
Norman.
But I got up there in that other hospital one night, and I wanted my music, and I hadn't had it, and don't know where they had put the tablet at exactly. And I'm asking them, and I didn't. So they bring me a pencil, big fat kid's, like a first grade pencil, and a board where I could write on. And I tried to write what I wanted about my music. They couldn't even read it. It was so bad. I had so little hand control. I couldn't read what I wanted, and I finally just said, forget it, and went on. And so when you can't talk and can't communicate, I even had dreams at night about trying to talk and people not knowing or talking, and they didn't seem to understand. It was crazy. But I learned a little bit about that. I got a withered hand, and there was a man in the Bible had a withered hand, and I thought, well, I'm dumb. I've got a withered hand. And then I found out I couldn't walk. I'd been in the bed so many weeks, they'd get me up to walk. I couldn't walk. I didn't have strength to walk. I lost 55 pounds laying in that bed and lost all muscle structure that my calves had until the skin just flopped on my calves of my legs. So I went through quite an ordeal for a while, and people would treat me pretty good. And when you're in that shape, you don't get a bath very often. So every once in a while, they finally decided we got to bathe this guy, and they'd come in and strip your clothes off. All you had on was that old hospital gown, and I'd freeze in that thing. I'd ask for more covers, and they'd get a big old scrub brush, and they'd squirt you down with water with some kind of little bottle or a rag, and they'd wash you down, and then they'd scrub you, and they'd give you a pretty good scrub down. And I figured I needed it, and really after it's over, it felt pretty good to get a good clean feeling on you.
It's not fun having someone else bathe you.
No, it wasn't fun at all, and I doubt they were having much fun. You know, they do that all the time. That's a job to them. But no, it was quite a mess. So I've been through all that and been through the times and things that went along with no voice and all of the problems that go with that, trying to communicate. Couldn't get any communication out. But when the doctor came in that day, I was talking enough that he could understand. I think they actually handed me my voice box. I think is what happened. But it's really funny because I went several weeks without a voice box. One of the little nurse's aides had come in every morning. She was on a day shift, and she'd come in at 7 o'clock. She'd always go over to the calendar on the wall and change the date, write her name. She's on duty now and everything. And she'd come in, and I reached over. I guess they had pulled that off for a little while sometime, and I'd reached over and grabbed that voice box, and I said, "How are you today?" She jerked around and jumped. She had never heard me say a word, and she said, "Wow, I wasn't expecting a big voice like that out of you."
No, I'm not a big man, but you got a big voice.
And so it really shocked her. She's scared. I mean, I could see it written all over her, and she said, "Oh, you scared me." So maybe that day, maybe the next day, the nurse's name was Chad, and Chad came in, and he had his back to me doing something over there, and I spoke to him, "How are you today?" He turned around. He didn't jump, but he turned around and looked at me. He said, "Wow, to hear a voice like that after that little squeaky Mickey Mouse kind of voice you've been having," he said, "that was quite a change for you." But they'd give me a voice box that was pretty clear enough, and I talked to Connie on the phone a time or two with that, did I not, when I had to use the voice box?
We did, not Zoom, but yeah, it was Zoom.
It was Zoom.
It was Zoom.
We did Zoom with that tablet. That's part of the reason we had it. And I couldn't operate the tablet. The nurses would have to set it up. My hands wouldn't work right. They'd have to set it up. So they'd call Connie and set it up and get it going, and we'd do it.
You were going to talk about Dr. Cook.
Yeah, I was, but I was going to see if you want to say anything about that Zoom or anything doing it. She would have to do all the talking because I couldn't talk. She'd call. She'd sing to me. What else? Read scripture.
Read scripture. Read your birthday card. Several different things. I'd communicate with him the best I can, and I'm not a talker, so it was hard for me to even
think of enough stuff
to talk to him about. But I knew I needed to.
So used to him doing most of the talking, you filling in.
Yeah.
And right before this doctor came in, that's the reason I backed up. Tell him Thanksgiving meal. Tell him about that.
Thanksgiving morning, I got a Zoom call, and so I answered it. And so the nurse was there, and she said, "Don wants to talk to you or whatever." So I said, "Okay." So we were Zooming, and he said, I asked her, I said, "So does he realize it's Thanksgiving?" The nurse said, "No, I don't think he realizes it's Thanksgiving." And anyway, I thought, well, I just won't say anything. And so anyway, as soon as he got on to Zoom talking to me, he said, "What are you having for dinner? Who's cooking today?"
I had the voice box.
I had the voice box. And he said, "Who's cooking?" And I said, "Well, my sister's doing most of it, but I said, I'm going to help her with it some. What are you cooking?" And I said, "Well, I'm cooking a coconut cream pie, which is his favorite dessert." And he said, "Oh." And I said, it was in the oven doing the meringue. And I said, "You want to see it?" And he said, "Well, yeah." So I took the Zoom over to my oven and opened the oven door and let him see the meringue pie being cooked. Anyway,
something like it. That sure looks good.
That looks good. So anyway, he didn't get one then, but he got one for Valentine's Day, I think, in February. After he got home, he got one for.
But she thought it would really upset me because I couldn't be part of it. But I realized I couldn't be there, and I wanted them to have a good time. I wanted her to cook and do good and all that. And I guess her showing it to me just kind of sufficed. They're going to have a good meal whether I'm there or not. They're going to get their ice cream, their pie, or whatever they really want. So that was right before then, because it was on the 3rd or 4th when Dr. Cook worked on me the next week. Yeah, that would have been on Thursday. And the next Thursday is when he came in the room and talked to me and said, "Tomorrow I'll be in." And he looked at me and said, "Don, if you're not better by tomorrow, I'm going to give you different medicine tonight. And if it doesn't do it, tomorrow we're going to come in and do that endoscope. And I'm going to find out what's in your lungs, blocking your lungs. I think that you have a big ball of mucus in one or both of your lungs, and that's stopping your breathing. But if it's a growth that we've missed, we'll find it." And I said, "Doc, how are you going to get it out?" And he said, "With a tool like a dentist vacuum." He said, "We'll run that down in there. We'll suck that thing all out. And then I'll take a air flow, like a dentist blows air in your mouth. He said, I'll blow out the bottom of your lungs, clean every loose thing I can get out of there, and clean all your lungs out the best I can. He said, what we'll do is we're going to get you drunk and take you swimming with Jesus. And I said, do what? To myself. And I looked up and I'm thinking, nobody wants to meet Jesus drunk. This don't sound good. And I caught a gleam in his eye and I said, what's up, Doc? He said, well, the deal is you're so bad, if I use regular anesthesia on you, I'll probably kill you. He said, so we're going to just sedate you with this. You may not even go completely to sleep, but it'll mellow you down and set you down. This is a very invasive surgery. There's not really a surgery to it. We're just using a video and going in and looking at it. And he said, but you'll probably be all right. And said, if you go to sleep, you'll wake up after a while and everything will be fine. He said, we do it all the time now. Okay, I'll take it. So the next day, him and 3 women come in, pushing their carts and computers. And he comes in with his setup to do his video camera. He's got a computer hooked up to it so he can watch all of it as it happens. He puts it on, and I realized somebody slipped something in. I feel myself fading out. I didn't go completely out, but almost, I guess you'd say, kind of in a half sleepy feeling. And he said in a little bit, there it is, just what I thought. I got to get that out of there. He told Connie the next evening when he saw her that it was a big ball of mucus in my right lung right against my bronchial tube. So my right lung was doing absolutely nothing.
Ooh, and that would explain why you're having trouble breathing.
Yes, and that's why they couldn't clear it up. It wasn't breaking that mucus up, so it was keeping that completely stopped up on that one side, besides the COVID in my lung on the other side. So he said, and he would have probably been right. If they'd have put anesthesia on me, they'd have probably killed me. But the next day, I didn't see him. Connie, tell him, you called how many times?
4.
And asked
Saturday.
if they got me off the vent.
They told me they'd be taking you off, weaning you off of the vent on Saturday. So I called 4 times, and last time it was about 11 o'clock on Saturday night just to see if he was
Off the vent.
And they said, no, we haven't had any doctor's orders to try that, to do anything, taking him off. So.
But evidently, in my mind, they must have done it just about the time she was talking to a nurse. Somebody came in my room probably right about that time, because about 26 or 8 hours from the time I woke up, the next day, the day when he did that, I slept about 2 hours after that. When I woke up, I instantly knew I was better. Something was different. Well, it was my breathing much easier than it had been. And I, of course, just knew I'm feeling better. Something's better. And so about 26 hours or so later, they came in and took the vent off of me. Just ran oxygen straight into my nose with the little concentrator, and that cleared it up. And so the next morning, was it when I called you? All right, tell that.
Well, about 6 o'clock Sunday morning, I got a call, and so I jumped up and answered it, scared to death, but got it. And the nurse said, Don, your sweetheart wants to talk to you. And I said, okay, let me get Zoom on and, the whole bit, because it was easier if you did have the voice box on, it was easier with Zoom, seeing him and stuff, because not always was he understandable if he was using the voice box even. So anyway, so she said, no, he wants to talk to you. And I said, oh, okay. So anyway, I got on the phone and he said, Connie, I need my phone. I need my pajamas. I'm freezing to death. I need some long sleeves. I need some house shoes. And I thought, okay, he's better. It was just an instant. It was
better enough to be demanding.
She didn't even know if I was off the vent, and I went to talking like that, and she could hear me talking.
That was a miracle that morning.
If I understand the dates right, this was all the week after Thanksgiving, thereabouts? Or
the next week, it was about the 4th day of December, I think, when they took me off the vent, if I remember correctly. I had that wrote down in my Bible, and I didn't read my Bible, okay? I had the dates wrote down. I kept it. And I thought of it last night that I might bring it over here, but I forgot it. I thought, well, the dates aren't as important as the fact that it happened and it happened. So it happened so fast then, I went to improving, and so they immediately nearly. And people don't realize this. I had that trach, okay, so they wouldn't let me drink water. They wouldn't even let me bite on ice hardly. One time I talked to one of the doctors, and he stood and watched me. They brought a little tiny tray of tiny chips of ice because I begged him for water. They'd put it into that feeding tube, but my mouth would get so dry. One of the girls said, "You're going to get to eat. What's the first thing you're going to want?" I said, "Water. Somebody give me a drink." She said, "Really? Aren't you hungry for food?" "Yes, but not till I have some good water."
Your stomach, they were sending food in the other way, your mouth.
Oh, and the taste, you're not getting any taste at all. And by then, I had some taste because I could smell food. I finally could smell food again. And so it was one of those crazy things that, man, the craving for water, just crazy. What they didn't realize was one of the nurses was dumb enough to leave that cup close enough to my bed. And ever so often, I'd sip a little. Well, one of the gals noticed the water was down, and she caught me, and she moved the cart and got it away from me. She said, "You've been into that water. You get that in your lungs, and you'll die, buddy." She chewed me out pretty royal. But, man, you do about anything for water. And I think, yeah, I know a little bit about what the rich man was saying. Give me a drink of water. I was ready to about steal that water. And so what I got to doing is I'd ask them when they'd put water into that tube, that little box thing, they'd run that syringe in there and squirt it full of water. I'd say, "Fill that up again and do it again." I wanted more fluid in me. So they'd give me more water. They were pretty good about it if I'd ask, but they didn't want me touching that water. And I guess by then I thought it'd been long enough, and I was probably healed up enough. I wasn't too scared of it because I'd already sipped it a time or two, and I knew it wasn't going to kill me. I was being real careful, so I was pretty brave. But they wasn't liking that. But they got to telling me then, and so they tested my swallowing then in a day or two. That was on Saturday night. I got off the vent. I don't know if they came in Sunday or Monday. I think it was Monday. And I got to eat for the first time in how long, because I swallowed my swallow test. They tested me. They give you several things to let you try to eat and give you some applesauce and some little things. And it was really a treat, of course. You could smell it and taste it. And for the first time in 3 months, right at it. It wasn't quite 3 months, not quite 3 months at that point. So I get the swallow test and I pass it, and they ship me to Anadarko, to a rehab hospital.
I will go in with this. The day that he got to eat, the first day he got to eat, I was at work, and I was on the floor at Mardell, and I was allowed by my manager that I could carry my phone because of the situation, but the corporate office didn't really. I mean, they might would have okayed it, but we didn't ask.
You didn't normally get to carry your phone on the floor.
Didn't have your phone. So anyway, but he, I was out on the floor, and I got a phone call from the hospital, and anyway, the nurse was there and said, "Don wants to show you something." And I said, "Okay, I'm on the floor. Can I call you back?" She said, "No, he wants to show you right now." And I said, "Okay." So I said, "Hold on just a minute. Let me get to the back." So I put my phone down to the side and ran back to the stock room. And anyway, it was on the, evidently it wasn't Zoom. I don't know what we were doing, but it was on something. Anyway, because I didn't have Zoom on my cell phone. But anyway, whenever they saw him, he was chewing, and he wasn't saying anything. And I said, "So you're getting to eat. Can you talk now?" And he kind of shook his head, and she said, "But he's not wanting to talk. He's wanting to eat." And boy, he was just smiling from ear to ear, wanting to tell me that he was getting some
food. They gave me some kind of fruit that day, wasn't it?
I think it was like fruit. I think
like the
canned fruit.
Kind of fruit cocktail type
cocktail thing. Well, that was his.
Yeah, that would be a treat after not being able to eat for months.
For months. Yeah, it's crazy. People don't realize how miserable you get just not going through your normal daily routine. Just you're alive, but you're not doing very well. So
anyway, that was on a Monday, and so they told me the next day. They told me then. I think they told me on that Monday that Tuesday they would take him to Anadarko, to a rehab center, a hospital there. And so anyway, so they said, "Oh, it'll be at 1:00. We will load him up." So I took off work early, went there. No, I didn't go to work that day. I didn't even go. I went up there, was there. I think I picked up his clothes. I got his clothes together because they said bring him clothes to work out in. And So I got all that together and we took it up there, and they didn't get him loaded up until 7 o'clock that night. But I had to sit out in the car all day. I couldn't even go in with him. So I sat out in the car. I didn't know when they were going to take him. Had no clue. First, they'd call me and say, no, it's going to be 3 o'clock. Then it's going to be 6 o'clock. They finally took him, loaded him up at 7. So I hadn't been able to see him in person for probably 3 weeks. I'd seen him through a window at Thanksgiving, and then they shut me out from that. I couldn't see him then. So anyway, it was, would that have been 2 weeks? But I guess it maybe 2 weeks. Anyway, I was able to see him from the time they left the door in the hospital to the car that transported him, the van that transported him. So I got to see him. Of course, he was cold, so we didn't have much to say to each other.
It was cold in December, and the weather was cold.
It's cool enough. He didn't need to be outside.
So I went to Anadarko, and when he got trached, they got little tubes of metal they leave in there to hold that open so it don't close up and grow up on you. So they downsized that then and went from like a 10 cm to a 8, and then a few days later it went down to a 6, and I was improving and getting to eat. Well, I get to Anadarko then on Tuesday night. They won't let me eat. They're feeding me through the tube again. We can't let you eat. I said, they were up there. I passed all of the tests. It doesn't matter. We got to do our own test. So it was about 2 days before the woman that did the test was off those 2 days or something. So I'm back on a feeding tube for 2 or 3 days. Very disgusting.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, you get an old man's blood pressure up.
Oh, yeah. Make your blood pressure. Yeah, you get hungry and you smell the food and you couldn't have any. And then they finally tested me and I passed it fine. I've swallowed okay. And I tell you that, but at the same time, I didn't swallow okay if it was too much, because they give me pills. If the pills were too big, I'd choke. And the weirdest thing, instead of coughing them up, I'd sneeze them up. It would trigger something and I would sneeze. It was like it hang over here on my right side. And a little bit, if I didn't get it coughed or hacked up, if I didn't get that, then it would sneeze, and here it'd come up. So they got to where they were grinding all of my pills, and then they'd put it on applesauce or something else, and you talk about nasty.
Pills and applesauce, yeah.
Those pills taste terrible.
And it was not just 3 or 4 pills.
It was about 15.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Some of them were vitamins, but I was on 3 antidepressant drugs for a while, and a heart pill to keep my heart in rhythm. I'd had trouble with it while I was in the hospital, which I never had. And then they'd give you a bunch of zinc and vitamin D, and I'm on I had 3 blood pressure medicines, or 4 that I take. And so I had a handful of pills. So I couldn't hardly swallow any of them at that time. So they grind them up, mix them in your food or whatever. So that was pretty annoying. And it's annoying to the nurses. It takes a lot more time. They have to go down to the grinder. And I became a pretty good load for them. So they'd take longer with me than they had to. But anyway, I was improving in that they have a physical therapist and a occupational therapist on staff down there. So every day that physical therapist would come in and he'd bring an aide with him, and they'd try to get me up onto a walker. And he's a big old thick-chested, strong, heavy boy, and he'd get me and he'd say, okay, Don, it's momentum. Rock back and forth in that chair and swing yourself up. Man, I'd try with everything I had to get up out of that wheelchair. I'd be in a wheelchair or on the bed. He said, all right, get a hold of that walker and rock back and forth till you get your momentum and then swing yourself up. So I would, and I couldn't get up, and he'd take his big old hand and he'd just push me. See, you almost did it by yourself. I turned around and looked at him after about the second time of that, and I said, if it wasn't for your big hand in my back, I wouldn't get up there. Well, about 2-3 days later on Saturday, that was probably Tuesday, probably Wednesday and Thursday or so, on Saturday, he's not there. And the occupational therapist was going to get me up and take me and work my hands. So me and her couldn't get me up out of the chair. We couldn't get me up walking at all. We tried everything we could do. I think her name's Allison, and we could not make it happen. So when he came back on Monday, I told him, I said, Allison came to help me, and I said, we couldn't get up. And he said, what? You're doing pretty good. What's the matter with that little girl? Well, she's probably 130 pounds. She's a little woman. And I said, I don't know. Me and her tried our best. We didn't ever get me up going. But he'd do me that way, and he'd walk me. And that his aide would take a rolling, big cushion chair, almost like a big armchair, and she'd roll right behind me in case I would fall. She could just shove it under my knees, and I didn't ever fall, but I got weak a time or two, and he'd say, do you need to sit down? And I'd say, yes. And he said, all right, just sit down. So I just sat down. She'd have that chair right there. And we'd walk until I couldn't hardly go. He'd let me go back to the room every day to increase it a little bit. And if he hadn't pushed me, I might not have done as well as I did. But, Justin, just push, push, push. And then that occupational therapist, she'd try to get this hand to work, and it wouldn't work. And we'd do exercises, do all kinds of things. But this hand wouldn't work, and I put a walker. And in order for me to even use a walker, they had to order a contraption that fits on it and elevates this hand to where instead of you're using it with your hand, you're using it with your whole forearm and strap you onto that. And so it would help move the walker because it's strapped to your wrist, your forearm. So that's the way I learned to walk, was with that deal. And we had it on after I got home, they sent home health care there, and 2 or 3 weeks I was doing that, and one of the physical therapists come in, and I asked her, Connie did, can we move this arm deal? I told her, I said, I think I can grip it enough. I could move my fingers a little by then. I was working on, I think I can get, and I showed her how I could kind of get a hold of it. And she said, let's try it. So she and I took the elevator part off of that walker and got on a regular walker, and that helped because my hands were at the same level then and doing the same thing, although this hand wasn't doing a whole lot. But it could get where I could wrap my hand kind of around the top panel on the walker.
That's your left hand. Was your right hand mobile at all at this point?
My right hand was mobile. This one was the one that still had the limp wrist.
Oh, okay.
So, the left hand had the limp wrist, but the fingers would kind of open. I could pry it open and set it over on that. I had to pry them open. They didn't open on their own. But I would get a hold of it, open it up, set them down onto the walker, and then I could kind of curl around it and make it work. They were real afraid that I couldn't grip it enough to hold myself up. And I might not could have, but I never did have to. I never did fall. I never did have to worry about that. And just the balance was. And so 6 weeks of working at home, after I got home, they gave me all kinds of exercises, and they'd come see me 2 days a week, and the occupational care therapist would come 3 days or something. Anyway, I had somebody there 4 or 5 days a week. Nurses coming in, checking me regularly. And so I went to work on that because I was bound determined to get out of that wheelchair. And what's almost hard to tell is how bad my backside hurt. My bottom would just kill me. They'd make me sit up an hour at a time in a chair, and by the time that hour's over, I was aching. I'd lost all the weight down through my legs, but also off the back of my hips, and I never had much there anyway. Man, it hurt. I'd beg Connie, come help me move. I'm hurting awful. I'd shift around in that chair. Of course, it had a seat belt or a big belt to keep me from falling out of the chair. So it was a mess, but little by little, the Lord just kept helping me. And about 6 weeks went by, and the physical therapist one day said, come over here by the counter and walk along the counter, holding on to the counter without your walker. And I did pretty good with it, and she wanted Connie to help me do it. So the next day or two, I'm walking along there, and she had me turn, and I had my hand on it, didn't I? And I could just hold it with one hand and walk along there. And so one evening, Connie said, why don't you turn loose of that and just walk? Just stay beside it. So if you fall against it, or you can grab it. And I did, and I walked. It was almost 6 weeks to the day from the time I came home from the hospital till I could walk again.
I still gate belted him. I had a gate belt on him.
Yeah, she had a big gate belt, big wide belt on me. She'd help me walk. And so that was a milestone to be able to walk again.
That would be about when? I can't keep track of this many weeks and this many weeks at this point.
He came home December the 26th.
About 6 weeks, so February-ish?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
middle of February.
Middle of February.
Okay.
About the middle of February. And little by little, I got to doing better, and I got to walking through the house, and I was on oxygen the whole time. Okay, so I do exercises laying in the bed with my hands, my feet, do all kinds of exercises. They had a whole list of them. And they'd give them to me, and I'd say, how many repetitions? And they'd tell me 15 or 20. Okay, I'd do that many in the morning, and up in the afternoon, 3 or 4 o'clock, I'd do it in the morning. It'd wear me out, and I'd take a nap. Connie'd feed me some lunch. I'd go back to bed, take a nap. Then I'd wake up in the evening, and 3 or 4 o'clock, I'd do all the exercises again. Not that they pushed me to it all. And they got to ask me later, and they said, man, you're improving really fast. And I said, well, when you gave me exercise, I'm doing them twice a day. And they said, that's the reason you're improving. Your effort is so persistent. And it worked. It really, little by little, and they had a deal they told me to buy and hook over the top of the door case where I could exercise this arm. This arm, I couldn't raise my right arm up over my head hardly, and this one wouldn't at all. About like almost just straight out from my body, that arm would go. So I would do that and pull down with this one, it would stretch this one. And boy, about a week of that, this arm all of a sudden got a little life to it. And so that particular exercise really thrilled me because in a little bit I had both shoulders working, my arms working. My wrist still wasn't working. It took 9 months of exercise before that wrist started where I could move it on its own. It just wouldn't do. It was awful. Reach for something and that wrist would just flop. And the hand wouldn't open. And the hand still don't. You can see from where you're sitting that my hand won't open all the way to this day. But I can use it, I can mash it, I can grip, and I can do it. It's lots better. I still exercise it all the time.
Nurse with your lung.
Oh, and
I don't remember the dates of it.
no, but somewhere along she hadn't been coming.
Oh, that would have been in March, though.
Yeah,
It would have been after March.
It would have been before March because she was working full time.
That's when I told you to start taking Mullen, though.
That's right. Connie went back to work, and one of her former executives with Mardell was working over at Hobby Lobby, and he'd got it real bad, and he had been pushing a oxygen cart to work, an oxygen bottle, and breathing oxygen. He got off it and come over, and he'd talk to Connie about how I was doing. He'd had an awful case of it too, and he told her, said, "Get you some mullein."
What is mullein?
Mullein is a natural weed that grows, and they harvest it, dry it, and they have used it to treat TB patients for over 200 years. Okay. It's a natural plant that helps, and it grows in almost all 50 states. It grows wild in Oklahoma and several places, but one of the lakes right there close, and we'd never heard of mullein, didn't know anything about it. And he took it for, I believe he told Connie on the 3rd or 4th day after his wife did a little research on it, he had a friend tell him about it. And he said, I don't know what that friend might have even smoked it. Well, come to find out, some of the Indians did smoke it, kind of like a marijuana plant. It doesn't do the same high, but it is medicinal. Even the smoke of it had something to do with the lungs. So they grind it, you can make a tea out of it, or they'll sell you tea leaves and you can heat it like tea. And there are people take it and use it for arthritis. Brother Terry Guthrie uses it as a tea, and it helps his arthritis. Well, I started drinking that, and I just take it and buy it in a little eyedropper bottle and pour it in a glass of water. And I had done it for 9 days, if I remember right. And the nurse that was coming 2 or 3 times, twice a week, I think she came. What's her name right off? I'm not blank. Anyway, Paula would come in, and she'd always test my lungs and listen to me breathe. And after I'd taken that about 9 days, she listened to my lungs, and her eyes lit up. And she said, Don, the first time in all the times I've listened to you, I heard air movement in the bottom of your right lung. So that was exciting, but it really began to improve. I had worked and walked and got to doing it, but we had 70 feet of hose, if I remember right, 65 or 70 feet of hose from the concentrator, so we would have to drag that big old thing. It had wheels, but it was heavy, and Connie was having to drag it. Would put it, when you was gone to work in the daytime, we'd put it in the middle of the house, in the middle of the kitchen, and I could go sit in the recliner. I could get to the kitchen. I could go to the bathroom with that much hose without moving that concentrator. I couldn't move it by myself hardly. It was too much. So anyway, my lungs started improving, and I started walking then, and I got to where I'd walk outside and push my oxygen bottle. And after I started doing that, I'd go out and walk the driveway, and one thing just led to another. I just kept progressing. And this hand finally got to where I could raise my arm up above my head. And I couldn't kneel down to pray. I hadn't knelt to pray from September until, must have been about April. And so one night I'm medicine with my concentrator, and I'm doing enough better I didn't even think about it. I couldn't see. It was dark enough in the room. I couldn't see my control knob to raise my amount, because when I exercised, I raised it up because I'd run out of oxygen so fast. So I just dropped down on one knee, and Connie's sitting in her big massage chair. And she starts hollering, "Don't, you won't get up, you won't get up." Sure enough, she's right. I got down on the floor on one knee and couldn't push off the floor. I could not get back up. And we got tickled, and she starts laughing and said, "You'd do anything to get me out of this chair, wouldn't you?" So she said, "How in the world are we going to get you up?" So she went and got the gate belt. And I was just 3 or 4 feet from the bed there over where the concentrator was. And I said, "Oh, well, you get a hold of it, and I'll turn around, and I'll see if I can kind of crawl to the bed, and you help me. And then I'll get up, and you push forward on that belt, shove me up in the bed, and I'll push with my legs the best I can." We got in the bed, and then we had a good laugh. We laughed. Dummy, you wasn't supposed to do that. But it was a pleasure, Stephen, when I finally got to where I could kneel before the Lord again and say, "Hey, Lord, thank you. I'm home. I'm walking. I can pray. I can actually raise both hands up after a while." It didn't all happen in the same week, but over a period of time, I finally got to where I felt about half normal. And I don't know, somewhere along in May or June, I actually got to where I could tie my own shoes. I had been wearing some slip-on type shoes. Got to where I could tie shoes, and I don't know yet. I still hadn't figured out how I managed to do that because my fingers wasn't working right. But it was exciting, just step at a time. Little by little, the Lord has improved it, and you can see it's still not 100%, but I tell folks 80, 85% is back to normal. So I guess I ought to tell one more funny one. We decided that about the 3rd or 4th time I wanted to take a shower, the occupational therapist had been helping me shower, get me in and out of the shower. And so we decided on a Sunday morning that we were going to give me a shower. We waited till 9:30 or 10 after I'd ate breakfast, and we'd go in the bathroom, and I'd freeze when I get out to go to the shower. So she'd heat the bathroom up above normal and get it good and warm in there. So I went in there, and I'd done it 2 or 3 times while he was there, and I'd put the walker up in there, and I'd step up in there. But I'd use my right foot. My right foot was stronger than my left one. It's kind of like my left hand. It was weaker. It just wouldn't do as well. So this day I made a mistake of putting my left foot up in there first. And when I put my left foot up in there and went to step up in there, that left leg folded like an accordion. And down I went. She's got that belt, and she's trying to hold me up. I'm hollering, oh, what am I going to do? How am I going to do? And I just slid down the wall, the shower door wall, just slid down and sat down there and just half propped up. She's holding me up. She said, "What are we going to do?" And she's hollering, and I said, "Main thing is let me down. Let me sit down." So I sat down then, and she called Trent, and we caught him just as he walked out the door. Well, he hadn't not walk out. He was fixing to walk out the door to go to Sunday school. And we caught him, and he come over, helped me finish showering, and then I got out. And we did it again pretty quick after that, but I just always remembered, step up with your right leg, it's stronger. I didn't even think about it that day. I should have known this one wasn't quite as strong. But anyway, that was funny to us. Nothing hurt, nothing happened bad, but Man, I wilted. It just folded like an accordion. Down I went.
Is there a particular reason your left side was weaker, or is it just, or is it just because you're right-handed?
No, the left side was actually weaker, probably from more lack of use, because this side had all the IVs and everything for the whole rest of the time. The right hand did for a while, but my leg never had any, but I never got out of bed. And so it just lost its strength. And it probably wasn't as strong as right leg because I'm right-handed and right-footed, and do all that. We don't really know, but we know it was. Now, it didn't take long to get them doing the exercise. I couldn't tell any difference in them. I climbed stairs and had a machine that I'd step up on after I got to where I could walk. Then I gradually got to where I could step them downstairs and did all of that. I'd spend a lot of days, about 4 hours doing that physical exercise, trying to get where I could go back to work. So, yeah.
When did you go back to work? I remember hearing about it. I just don't remember when.
Well, what happened was in July, the first weekend, the weekend of the 4th, Trent and Mandy were going to move into a travel trailer out by my shop, and they were renting a house in Blanchard. And the weekend they moved out there, he got COVID. He hadn't had COVID at all. And he got really bad, and in 2 or 3 days he was in the hospital, and he spent 28 days in ICU with COVID. And when he did, there was nobody to run the shop. And so I had to go back to work. So it would have been about the end of the first week of July. And that's when I started physical therapy there at Blanchard at Physical Therapy Central. And so the first week of July, and I couldn't work but about 4 hours, and I was just exhausted. I'd go home, go to bed, eat lunch, go to bed, and go to sleep. And then I'd get up the next day and try it again. And just gradually, one thing led to another, and then I'd come home, take a nap at lunch, go back to work after a few weeks. Just got better and better and better. And, yeah, I had issues, and there's things I couldn't do. Still some things I don't do well, just not the same as it used to be. I tell them it made an old man out of me fast. I went from doing about anything I wanted to hardly doing anything. Thank the Lord, it's been so much better.
What is your job?
Well, I own a cabinet shop, but I physically haven't built cabinets in who knows how long. I'll go out and show them parts or kind of go through stuff. But most of my business, I do the paperwork and the bidding and the billing and that sort of thing, and directing traffic is what I call it. I tell the guys what I want. You draw this. I have a guy that does my computer drafting, and he'll design the cabinets, and I'll go over them with him and point it out to him. I'll go meet the customers, see what they want, meet the builders if it's a builder involved. And then I'll go back in the back every day and ask questions and watch them and let them ask me questions of what do we need to do with this and this and this. So basically I'm more the manager of the cabinet shop, not a physical. And I haven't physically built cabinets in years other than just an odd end and ends here or there or once in a while. I used to build cabinets all the time, but after I got to doing the shop, I became the outside sales. And then when Greg and Trent both were gone, there was nobody else to do it. I did everything but the drawing. They both had drawn them, but I never did take the time to learn it. I didn't have time. There was always something else that had to be done, and Trent taught one of the other boys that was pretty good in the computer. He draws.
Okay. Do you want to tell about meeting that, what was it, the doctor you guys met? Dad had just said the other day, you're telling about, was it a doctor from Idaho you bumped into?
Yeah.
At Mardell, a family, I thought a family, well, a family looked like a family, man and woman and some children came in the door, and they were holiness-looking people. The woman had dress on, the couple girls did. And but they weren't super friendly. I was up at the front, and I usually speak to anyone that comes in if they'll look at me or anything. And they didn't really look at me. But anyway, I was customer servicing the floor, and I went by them and spoke to them, and they still weren't real friendly. And anyway, I finally said something about,
Where do
you go to church? Asked them, because she looked real holiness, and she was telling me my husband's a pastor in Oklahoma City. Anyway, she said, this is my brother, and he's from Idaho. And anyway, it was wintertime, and she said, yeah, he came down here to get warm. And I said, so if it's so cold up there, why don't you just move down here? And she said, well, his job has him up there. And I said, so what do you do? And he said, I'm a doctor. I said, oh, okay. I said, so if you're a doctor, do you mind if I tell you my testimony of my husband? Oh, no. And so I went to telling him about Donnie's COVID journey, and we talked out on the floor for a little while. And so I told, when I told him that he was on the trach, and
You didn't tell him he was on the trach.
I told him he was on the vent. I told him he was on the vent. I didn't tell him he had a trach. Then I told him he was on the vent. And anyway, he said, oh my, he's a miracle. Said, we lost 3 colleagues of ours that were doctors there in that hospital that I work with. And he said, if they go on the vent, there just wasn't, any much hope at all. I said, oh, I know that it was a miracle. So anyway, it was time for me to clock out, and I had visited with him a good while, and I went and clocked out. And I thought, I'm going to take a picture of Donnie when he was in the hospital
And show it
to him. And then I'll show him a picture of him standing. I had a picture of him out on the front porch after he'd gotten better, and he still hadn't gained any weight or anything to speak of, but he was a lot better. So anyway, I thought I'll take a picture and just show him the difference. So anyway, I went by. He and his sister were looking at Bibles when I started leaving. I said, let me show you a picture of my husband. Anyway, when I showed him the one of him in the hospital bed, he said, oh, he had the trach? And I said, yeah. He said, that's a death sentence. He said, if you get a trach, he said, there's just not a whole lot of chance even that you're going to pull out. He said, the vent and the trach? And I said, yeah. I said, anyway, so he said, well, it's time for me to shout. So he just did a little jig right there in Mardell's hand. Anyway, he said, he is a miracle. So anyway, I showed him a picture of him then when he was well and everything. And he was all excited about it.
He's an infectious disease doctor.
Yes,
that's his job, to deal with those kind of things. He saw it all through this COVID. And this would have been a Thanksgiving of 21 or 22.
One probably.
May have been, yeah.
I think
about that time of year. He's down here around Thanksgiving time, if I remember right.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right, so thank you, and thank you for the patience for being my first guests.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
I figured out this thing.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. I'd like to add a few notes after the fact. After we finished the interview, we pushed back our chairs, thinking we were done. In the process of talking about this and that, Uncle Donnie and Aunt Connie ended up sharing a few more stories, including a few medical professionals that told them just what an ordeal they went through and how much a miracle it is that Uncle Donnie is doing quite well, even though he's not back to how he was before. Unfortunately, because we had backed up, had initially stopped the recording, I did not get as good of a recording as I was hoping when I turned the microphones back on. As a result, I did not include these last few stories. One other thing they did mention that I was not clear enough to broadcast, they do not always agree on the timeline things happen off the top of their heads. As they mentioned, they have put together a timeline that they are able to sort through and corroborate with various messages, but they did not have it with them at the time of recording. In any case, if you ever run into Uncle Donnie and Aunt Connie, I'm sure they'll be happy to tell you the stories they told me and quite a few more that they didn't tell me. This is but a summary of the many months that they had to deal with the after effects of COVID. Hope you enjoyed their testimony.